Stage, Dan Fogarty, talking a little bit about LinkedIn strategy, driving revenue and growth. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Dan. Dan, take it away.
Hey guys, I'm Dan Fogarty. I'm a former journalist. I worked at Boston Globe Media and USA Today. I did that up until 2016, and I left to write a novel. And I realized that I was not going to make any money writing a novel. So living in Boston at the time, I realized, okay, I got to bring some money in while I work on this book. And I basically kind of went around and I started just doing content for businesses. I went to mom and pop catering companies. I went to bars. I went to VCs. I went to AI companies attached to MIT, and I started doing things like website copy, social media. And that business started to turn into ghostwriting eventually, where I would sit down with a founder or a VC or a small business owner, and I would interview them like a journalist. I would use the skills that I learned at the Globe and USA Today to kind of get to the root of their story and not just, what mattered to them, but what I felt would matter to their audience and their ICP, ICP being ideal customer profile. I think a lot of people, when they think about content and they think about their business and promoting it online, they get a little bit too into the weeds around selling. And while that's important, I think it's important also to tell a story that other people are interested in, to treat yourself like a publication. So that's my preamble. I would like to get into the presentation itself. And as Andy said, if you've got questions, I'm going to do my best to answer them kind of as they pop up. If you've ever used a webinar before, this one's very intuitive, but it can be hard sometimes to juggle multiple tabs, multiple questions. I'm going to do my best. At the end, there's going to be a Q&A as well. So if I don't get to your question during the webinar, I will try to at the end during the Q&A. If I don't get to it during the Q&A, I hope to, you can email me or reach out on LinkedIn. All right. Go ahead and share. Okay, so leveraging LinkedIn for your small business. We're talking about driving leads, revenue, and growth. You know me already. This is a little bit more about me. Again, like I said, I started in journalism. I was living in Boston at the time. I'm originally from New York City. I started ghostwriting for these kind of like founder, VC, small business owner types. What kind of changed the business for me, there was two big changes. One, around 2020, I decided to go all in on this. And I think the reason was that people started to understand content and thought leadership, which is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but they started to see it working more on LinkedIn. I think people started to see it in action. They saw other people using LinkedIn, using social media to tell a story about themselves, about their business, but about kind of what they saw in their industry. And I think because people started trusting everybody else that was, like seeing that and like seeing how that worked in real time, I think then they started to say to themselves, okay, well, maybe I can do that. And I think LinkedIn started to grow as a platform, and social media in general for business really started to grow around 2020. The second big tipping point was the release of ChatGPT. So, there's a lot of AI content out there. We're going to get into how to kind of utilize that in a way that people won't hate you. But it certainly allowed more people to scale what they were doing. You're busy. If you're running a small business, maybe you've got clients, or you've got a store, or you're running a service. You've got the business itself. You've got the core thing that you have to pay attention to. And then you've got all the stuff around it. You've got admin, invoicing, and then you've got your life. You've got your family. You've got a spouse potentially. So where does like LinkedIn and social media and marketing fit into all this? The caveat to all this is that if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. If this gets in the way of running your business or being present with your family, don't do it. Do what works. Do what works for you. That's just a quick aside. I'm going to be talking about LinkedIn a lot today, but a lot of these maxims can be, used for Instagram. They could be used for Facebook, depending on what kind of business you run. If it's like a B2C business, like if you have a bar, or if you have a restaurant, or you're a personal trainer, I think Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, those platforms make more sense. If you're more like service oriented, B2B side, right? If you're selling into other businesses, LinkedIn is the play. But a lot of this advice, certainly from the content generation side, can be applicable to multiple platforms. Okay, so I live in the Madison area. I still have clients in New York, but I'm also working with local companies, local staffing agencies, local manufacturing companies. Recovery.com is a big client of mine. I've worked with Tend, Deloitte, inclusively, VCs. I've worked with Fortune Brand Studio. I've worked with private equity companies and small business owners. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn specifically for a second. So brand accounts, like if you go on LinkedIn and you see a company account, you're going to notice that the engagement on those accounts, on posts from those accounts, meaning like if Pepsi posts something, it's going to be kind of way less per capita, like relative to how many followers they have, than if, say, the chief marketing officer from Pepsi said something. I think increasingly people want to hear from people. And the good news is that if you run a small business and you don't have a giant brand already, I think people are more interested in hearing from you, the business owner. The brand matters, particularly if you're building a business that you hope to one day kind of pass off to somebody else or kind of run autonomously with other people. Building a brand matters. But I would also say if you've got people working for you, I think them posting content matters. You posting content matters. I think in general, what we're seeing is that it's around 4 times the amount of engagement, kind of relative to follower size, if a personal account posts something. We can get into the specifics of that and kind of how that might feel a little weird being the face of your business and kind of tools that I use to kind of get over that. But just keep that in mind. Stuff that comes from people matters, I believe, more than stuff that comes from brands. Unless you're talking about, conventional advertising or, an ad in the Super Bowl or like a billboard, brand still matters, of course. But I think it's more so a platform for the people that work at those brands to have a voice. On LinkedIn, especially on the B2B side, what I'm seeing with my clients is that deals start in inboxes. LinkedIn is a platform where if I know my ideal customer is a chief innovation officer at a health tech company, I can actually connect with them. I can send them a connection request. It's not like other social media platforms where I have to wait for them to follow me or follow them. And once we're connected, it's kind of a two-way street, meaning I can send them messages. I can post content that they're more likely to see. You don't want to spam anybody. You don't want to go out there and just start automating messages to everybody and reaching out to everybody with just saying like buy my product or work with me or what. That's weird. Don't do that. But LinkedIn offers the ability for more people to see what it is that you're doing, and increasingly the barrier to entry, right? If I get a message in my inbox, I'm more likely to see it than like maybe something that gets buried in my email. Plus, you got to find my email address, yada, yada, yada. So there's a lower barrier to entry on social media, but especially on the B2B side on LinkedIn. I want to talk about like how often do you post on social media? Well, I advise my clients to post 2 times per week. That's kind of what we aim for. But quality beats quantity, right? If you're just starting out and you've got all this other stuff to deal with, again, maintain your sanity, maintain the running of your business. You don't want to get caught up in being too precious about any one post, but, take your time, be intentional with it. There's no hard and fast rule of how often to post. I recommend 2 times per week. That seems to be the midpoint between taking it too seriously and not being accountable enough if you're really serious about using LinkedIn. Decision makers. Again, kind of like, let's say you run an app for restaurants, right? And you're using LinkedIn or you're using Instagram. They're let's say they're the decision maker that's going to decide to use your app. They're on LinkedIn and they see your content, or they're on Instagram and they see your content. They're less likely to like and engage with it. Oddly enough, your customers are less likely to telegraph that they're going to work with you. Because if you think about it, let's say I'm running a service business. I see somebody posting on LinkedIn, they're posting great content. I'm talking to my team. I'm like, I really want to work with her because she's really smart. She seems to get it. We should probably have a conversation. I am not going to leave a comment on her post saying, hey, I'm going to reach out soon. Can't wait to work with you. I'm not going to telegraph that, especially if I'm at a higher and higher level. People just don't do that. So oftentimes you're going to see these customers, these ideal customers lurking. They're going to see your content. They're going to be forming relationships with your ideas, but they're not necessarily, you might not see that engagement from them. They might be looking at your profile. We'll talk more about that in a bit, like what metrics actually matter when you're using LinkedIn, but they might be lurking. They might just be lurking. This happens to me all the time. People are seeing my content, they like it. I have no idea until they reach out to me 8 months later and they're ready to work with me. So, um, final points. These aren't chapters in a book. You don't have to post content in sequential order where you're introducing yourself to the world because you haven't posted in a while. You could do that. Like if you've never posted on LinkedIn before and you've got followers and you just start doing it one day, you could just start doing it. Or you could say, hey, I'm trying to be more intentional about using LinkedIn. Let me reintroduce myself. Here's my product. Here's my service, whatever. Here's what I'm working on. Here's a bit about me. But past that, it's not like everybody is going to see every piece of content you put out there. So if you repeat yourself, right? If you come back to certain ideas, I actually recommend that. I don't recommend reposting the same thing over and over again. I recommend that you reword it, that you kind of find different avenues into similar ideas. But odds are you're going to have certain content lanes and ideas that you're going to want to come back to that resonate with your audience, sell your product, and also resonate with you. And it's exciting for you to talk about. And it's not like if you post about it once, it's over, right? Because only between 3 to 10% of your audience ever sees any particular post. So keep that in mind. Last one, this is important. This is just a maxim on posting content in general. I am a big proponent of show, don't tell. Show, don't tell is an old kind of like novelistic term, which means if there's an emotion happening, show the emotion, right? Show what's happening, show the action. Don't tell the reader, this is how you're supposed to feel. You're supposed to be sad now. If that happened in a novel and you're reading and all of a sudden the action broke up and a line just said, okay, now it's time for you to be sad, that would be weird. So I think the same thing applies to expertise and how we display expertise and knowledge on a platform like LinkedIn. I think if you're a small business owner, and you're selling into a particular ICP, the way to build trust is that you show that you know what you're talking about. It's not that you repeatedly say, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. My product's the best. My product's the best. Show it. Show it through talking about specific events or macro insights. We'll get more into this, but show stats from how your product works. Show display results. Just show, don't tell. We're not going to spend too much time on this, but basically, when it comes to B2B, LinkedIn is the best. I understand that there may be people on this call that maybe have B2C businesses, right? And it depends. I think for more like restaurant style businesses or fitness oriented businesses or like health and wellness stuff, I think other platforms make more sense, right? Like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. When it comes to B2B, LinkedIn is king. There's just no comparison. There are people on this platform every day who make decisions. They run businesses. They work at high levels in corporations. It's where they kind of scroll when they're wasting a little time from doing their full-time jobs. If you are on there and you're consistently posting good content that feels organic and authentic to you and who you actually are, don't go too crazy. Don't go like too Facebook on me. Don't get, this is still a business platform. It's still professional. But if it feels oriented to how you are as a business owner and it doesn't feel cringy to you and people consistently see it and it's smart and you're delivering value, it is just, it's a free way to form relationships, and better relationships means better business. All right. So we talked a bit about content. I talked about my journalism background. When people think about LinkedIn, right, they're kind of like, well, what do I post about? Like, what do I do here? What do I talk about? Philosophically, the way to think about this is think about you as a journalist. Think about what a journalist would want to know from you, but also if you were a publication, right? So let's say that you were a staffing agency Okay, you're running a staffing agency in Dane County. You've got certain territories. You mostly focus in on biotech and healthcare jobs, right? So there's going to be other staffing agencies in Dane County. There's going to be other staffing agencies that focus on biotech. But maybe, you come from a sales and marketing background or a business background, or you had an English degree in college. Maybe you're new to it. Maybe you've been doing it for a while. When you start putting these points together, what you find is that you have a vantage point that no one else does. I went through this when I was writing a novel. My novel is about a professional fighter with concussions who lives in New York, and it's a psychological thriller. There were better psychological thrillers that were written besides my book. There are more famous books about New York. There are more famous books and writings about fighters, but there aren't many that have all those elements. And I was the only person alive at that time I felt that could tell that specific story. So think about it that way. All of a sudden, imposter syndrome seems to matter a little bit less because you have a vantage point. Okay. When you combine all your lived experiences, all your work experiences, what you're doing, who you focus on, and who you help, it is likely that your vantage point is specific. Does every post you ever do have to be about that thing? No. But if you are running a staffing agency in the Midwest, in Dane County, I want to know about jobs data. I want to know what you're seeing on the ground. I want to know, how are people getting hired? What does the flow look like right now? What companies are hiring? What is the move? What is the macroeconomic movement in this state and in this city and in this county that you can speak to, because you are in the room. And that is what the in the room strategy is. You are in rooms that other people do not have access to. If you think about any kind of good journalism, why do we like it? Whether it's about a MBA trade or some kind of high level political development or something happening on the ground somewhere. It matters because there are people with access to that information and who are in those rooms that we are not in. Okay. That's what makes good journalism, and that's what makes good content. So if you ever get lost, always come back to, where am I? What am I seeing every day? What knowledge do I have access to? And treat treat it as a beat, right? Journalists have beats. Some have the Metro desk, some have weather, some have crime, some have sports. Well, your beat is your job in your industry. So treat it like that. Then you want to focus on what matters to your ideal customers, right? It could be pain points, it could be things in the market. They could just be interested in you talking about these staffing insights. Because if I see you posting about it regularly, wow, that guy knows what he's talking about. And when it's time for me to fill a role or multiple roles, and I'm, scaling up my business, and I want to, work with a staffing agency, I want to work with somebody who understands the biotech field in Madison. And I see this guy in my feed every other week. That's who I'm going to talk to. I'm going to at least have a conversation with that person. I just want to check in really quick. See the chat. If we've got anything. Oh, Gary V. Gary Vaynerchuk suggests posting 7 days a week. Well, Gary V's a freak. Okay, folks. If you want to post 7 days a week, and I actually interviewed at his company one time. He's a cool guy, and I love his message and I love his optimism, and he's great at posting content. I would say I would say that you don't have to do that. That's not sustainable, right? Like, if you're running a small business and you've got kids and you've got a dog and you've got a spouse, or you're divorced, or you've got childcare payments, or you're like, real life is happening, that's a lot of time to spend on LinkedIn. Don't do that. Try to just get the lowest hanging fruit. Try to find, how can I use this platform to my advantage? He does have a camera person following him around all day. He's got somebody posting for him. He's got millions and millions of dollars. He's got a good strategy. But we're normal people and we don't have those resources. So yeah, I wouldn't say 7 days a week. Um, yeah, if some businesses are posting daily, yeah, they might be running out of stuff to talk about. I used to do in my old job when I was in journalism and I was working specifically in sports journalism, I went on TV a couple times, and they would have us go on and we talk about LeBron, or we would talk about the NFL, or we talk about sports. And I when they would have us on the show, it would be for 7 days in a row. And sorry, 5 days in a row. By the fifth day, I was kind of running out of stuff to talk about. But I was still going out there and I still had to fill the airspace. And so ever since then, I question sometimes cable media and some of these talk shows where it's like, do you really have that many opinions? I don't know. Maybe you do. That's great. But yeah, you're going to run out of stuff to talk about and it's just going to get annoying. The upkeep is just going to get tough. Um, okay, let's continue on. Let's forge ahead here. Okay, I talked about AI. This is it's not controversial per se, but I'm just going to tell you what I think. So I think you should use AI to do 90% of the work when it comes to your content, the grunt work. So if you've ever written anything or produced anything or done a video or a graphic, looking at a blank page is the hardest part. So like, how do you use AI to generate a really good first draft? Pretend that it is and um, I'm stealing this phrase from Matt Yunkel, who is the CEO of Pythonic, but he's got a phrase that's really, really good. It's called using AI as an army of interns. Use it as an army of interns. You wouldn't let the intern run the newsroom, but you'd have the intern go out, maybe get some information, maybe put together a draft, and you'd look everything over, make sure that it's correct, and you'd add a human layer of editing over it. That's kind of the mindset I want everybody to get into. So how do you do that? Well, Claude, ChatGPT, I prefer Claude. I think Claude is a better writer than ChatGPT. That is the AI that I use for all of my writing. Claude has this thing called projects. And I'm going to show you in a second what a project looks like. And essentially, what a project is it lets you pull in information. And then when you want to create content, it's only pulling from that walled garden of information. So if I have a project for my copywriting, which is something I'm going to show you in a second, I'll pull in information, other writing I've done, voice notes to myself, transcripts of me talking. I'll pull it into that project and I'll say to Claude, all right, generate a LinkedIn post that sounds like me. I only want you to use this walled garden. Because if you go to ChatGPT or you go to Claude and you say, all right, write me a LinkedIn post about e-bikes, because I sell e-bikes. That's my small business. Well, congratulations. It's going to pull from all the same information that everybody else does. And what you're going to have is something that I can only describe as a bit soulless. People are, even people that don't deal with content every day, and I think everybody on this call, your radar for AI is getting more sophisticated. When a piece of content kind of crosses that uncanny valley and you could tell that it's like totally AI, there's just something about it, the sentence construction, the lack of like maybe like soul or meaning, if I want to be kind of, woo woo about it. There's just something about it that you can tell. I think it comes down to certain phrases and words that it uses routinely. And I also think it's like the way that it formats, the sentence constructions. Do you want to know what I learned? Question mark. Well, I'll tell you, colon. Like just stuff, sentence constructions like that. We kind of are getting more and more familiar with what that looks like and it feels like to read. So if you just go and you type into ChatGPT, write me an SEO article about e-bikes, it's going to give you something that may look okay from a formatting perspective and be grammatically correct, but it's going to be the same pool that everybody else is pulling from. I think that people, search algorithms, social algorithms are going to get better and better at spotting a content that is 100% AI. So I don't recommend going that route. I know people that are going AI vegan, where they're like, you know what? I'm a creative. I do storytelling. I do movies. I do screenplays. I do marketing. I do ad copy. I'm going AI vegan. Um, that is the brand I want. I don't want it impacting my critical thinking skills. I don't want it impacting my practice of writing. I have complete respect for that as well. I have my own kind of journaling practice. I obviously write. I have certain creative endeavors that I don't really let AI touch. And it's not because I'm morally superior. It's because I don't want to sacrifice the muscle memory that it takes to construct something in that way. But when it comes to work and it comes to my business, I do use AI because I don't have the time not to. I'll still journal about my business. I'll still kind of keep the muscles moving, but I want to use AI in a way that I don't overuse it, but I'm kind of getting that first draft. So when we talk about Claude, and I think I'm just going to show you right now. I think you can see that. Yeah, I think you can see that. Andrew, can they see my Claude project?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this is my Claude project. All right. So like over here to the right is that's the project knowledge. Okay, so what are these? These are all like old proposals I've done, stuff, content I've put together. These are also a lot of voice notes. So what I'll do is I will walk my dog or I'll go for a walk with my, well, if I went for a walk with my wife and I started recording voice notes about my business, she would divorce me. So I don't do that. But if I'm walking my dog or I'm going for a walk around the block, I'll pop in some AirPods. I'll start talking about my business. And I'll generally have an idea of what I want to talk about, but sometimes I'll just ramble and I'll record it using a tool like Otter, or even right now on the iPhones, the voice memos, I think transcribe most of the content for you. I'll copy and paste that into this box over here. It's super intuitive and easy. You could just Google how to make a Claude project, super easy. I think you've got to pay for Claude to be able to make Claude projects, but I think it's like 20 bucks a month. It is a tool I highly, highly recommend. Okay, so now it's got all this data on how I talk, right? The words I use, the sentence cadence, the sentence structures, great. I'm rushing around. I got a client deadline. I got a sales call. I know I want to post on LinkedIn because I want to keep things fresh. I want people, I want, more eyeballs on my business. I want to kind of keep my pipeline moving, but I don't have the time to like sit down from square one. So I'll type in, I want to write a LinkedIn post in Dan style about, let's say, my process. Like, how do I do content? Because I want people to know, right? That's like an entryway into my business. So let's see what it comes up with. It might take a second because there's a lot of knowledge to parse through. And it'll produce something that kind of sounds like me, right? This runs a little long. I might say, hey, make it shorter, or, don't do a list. I want it more stream of consciousness. But what I'll do is I'll take all this and I'll copy and paste it into a Google Doc, and I will be the editor of my newsroom. The intern has just handed me this. Okay. So now I'm going to sit with a pen, my red pen, figuratively, in my Google Doc, and I'm going to edit it by hand. Okay. Or what I might do is I'll say, give me 5 better hooks, because the hook, which is like this little thing up here, and this mattered in journalism, right? Think of headlines. Think of headlines have gotten too sensational, but like think of what appears above the fold, right? That's what people like. These first, like this first grouping of words and sentences, if you scroll through LinkedIn, you only see the first part of a post. So this has to be really good. It has to be really good without feeling too clickbaity, right? So give me 5 better hooks for this post. Let's see what it comes up with. This is a really good question around managing time required for organic conversations. We are going to get to that, but bookmark that because that's an important one. It's a really good question. Okay, back to this. All right. No, this one stinks. This kind of stinks. These are a little too clickbaity, so I'd have to go back to the drawing board here. But trust your own internal instincts when it comes to what is good content and what sounds like you. You want it to be clickable. You want it to be we're not writing poetry here. We're not in Brooklyn. Like this is for your business. At the same time, if you veer more towards that, like perfect, everything's perfect, perfectly formatted, everything is, shockingly good, and it's using these like sentence structures where it's like super short sentences, but or it's like this like rhetorical question. Those are obvious AI giveaways, right? So you have to hand edit that stuff out, or you have to say like, don't use common AI sentence constructions. We're going to come back over here. So this, once you start using this, this can start producing LinkedIn posts, captions to Instagram posts. It can produce Facebook posts. It can produce website copy, emails, landing pages, sales materials, decks, proposals, one pagers. I'll use this to put together proposals. Like I used to pour over my proposals, and maybe like 1 out of 3 people says yes. Well, like for those other two, I've kind of wasted that time. So having a knowledge base, either on Claude or ChatGPT, I prefer Claude, is a great way to have agency over your business and produce stuff a lot faster. But always, always human edit everything. That's my view. Okay, so we talked a bit about this in the last slide, but this is just like you can come back to this slide later when you get the materials. You can go back to this part of the recording, but basically it's what have we talked about so far? Well, you want to be a reporter, okay? You want to record yourself talking about it. You could even, once you get to a certain point, you could prompt Claude or ChatGPT to be like, you are a reporter in my field, or you're a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. You're a business reporter. What questions would you ask me? If it's got enough information on you and you've done a few voice notes and it knows about your business, and it's helped you figure out your ICP, your ideal customer, you can also use it to like help figure out your brand. Once it has that stuff, okay, it can start asking you questions. The questions are not bad. It's not as good as talking to a human being, but they're not bad questions. I like talking about industry trends. I like shouting out other people. This is increasingly something I'm recommending my clients do. Do an audit of like a peer you respect or somebody in your field who's got a really good strategy. I have a client who is talking about a company who just got an investment for a lot of money and the strategy they're using that pertains to their field. This company's not even a client of theirs. They're just saying, hey, look at what this company's doing. This is why it's working. Again, showing, not telling. You can also do little mini case studies. Let's say you have worked with somebody and it's like a really successful endeavor. Yeah, you could do like a long case study that kind of gets buried on your website. It's good to have when people go to your website because they can go, they can look. Okay, there's proof. Like if you go to my website, it's proof I work with these people, it's proof of the results, yada, yada, yada. But I think having like little mini case studies on LinkedIn as LinkedIn posts and just walking through the strategy and why it works is a good show, don't tell strategy. Okay, so you can use Otter AI, you could use Google Meet, you could use the transcription thing of your choice. You get the transcript, Claude or ChatGPT projects, and then, you know, that's your prompt. Write a LinkedIn post or an Instagram post or a Facebook post or website copy in my voice or in my brand's voice, and you'll get a draft that's 90 to 95% of the way there. And then, of course, we want to human edit everything. Okay, so we talked about sustainability. We talked about how can you do this without going crazy. Um, I ideally recommend my clients post Tuesday and Thursday mornings. That's just what the data says, where the most people are on LinkedIn. Between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. is the highest engagement. I like between 8 a. I like the early morning. With that said, if inspiration strikes at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, post it because although there are less people on the platform, you're probably competing with less people posting. So just do it. Like do it when you feel like it. Um, I like scheduling my posts ahead of time. LinkedIn, a lot of platforms now have ways that you can schedule the post. So it's not like you have to log in every time you want to write something. You could just batch schedule like 4 of them and you're covered for the next 2 weeks or month. And then occasionally you're going to come back to the platform, check it, use it, see who's messaging you, see who's looking at your profile. We'll get into that in a second. But what are you posting about? Well, we talked about this, but I like macro outlooks, like what's happening in your industry right now. How does it look over the next 3 to 6 months? I was listening to a New York Times roundtable of business reporters, and they're talking about the economy. Obviously, if you're a reporter for the New York Times, you've got to be careful with saying this is what's going to happen in the economy. But even they were giving outlooks, ways that it could go, right? They were couching all of their predictions with this is the worst case scenario, this is the best case scenario. So you can couch what you're saying in here's how it could go, right? You're not saying this is what will happen, you're saying this is how it could go. Talk about your professional journey, build in public, right? Talk about how you built the business, talk about the strategies you're using, treat the things you're doing like product launches, right? Talk about how you're launching a new thing or what is your strategy? What are you hyper focused on this month or this quarter? What's working, what's not? Talk about your business. People are interested in that. They want to know how other people build their businesses, right? talk about that. I think the most important thing, tactics and playbooks, right? Like a pretty common post you'll see on LinkedIn is if I was a startup owner running my business, this is the exact marketing playbook I would use, right? You got to be careful with that because it's a little clickbaity. But if you can offer advice that comes from a place of genuine expertise, people really value that. They value educational content on this platform. You have stuff that other people want. You have knowledge other people want. To you, it might not seem like much because you're in it every day, but to other people, it's like shocking how much it might matter to them, and you might be shocked how much it'll matter to them. All right, let's talk about like actually formatting your LinkedIn, what it should look like, yada yada. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because there's a lot of good resources out there. I'm just going to offer kind of the most important advice that I think about. You can go to my LinkedIn as well. Actually, we'll just leave that alone. You could check out my LinkedIn later, but I like the way that I've got my headline, my banner. It's a good example of one that works for me. I also have a featured section that has case studies. You could book a demo with me, but it's pretty clear when you come to my LinkedIn page what I want you to do, right? Or the thing I'm trying to communicate. So for your LinkedIn, treat it like your new business card, but it's more interactive. You want a good photo, you want a headline of what you do. That might just be your job title, but it could also be like more specific to what value people will get from being on your page. So going back to that example, let's say I run a staffing agency. I could say I am CEO or owner of company X, staffing agency X, and just leave it at that, right? My job title will also be further down the page, but what I think matters most is like offering staffing insights for Midwest businesses. That's the headline for a publication. That tells you what information you're going to get by being on my page and following me. Okay? It shows you like what knowledge can I offer? Not like, hey, I'm going to take your business and 3x. There's too much of that on LinkedIn. I'm going to increase your sales by 150%. Like, are you really? Is okay, great. Awesome. Like it just feels weird. Like I don't like that as much as these are the insights I can offer you. Okay. Staffing insights around the Midwest, right? Or insights about the restaurant industry or whatever. Um, Experiment with that, see what feels right. You might want to just wait and see if posting regularly feels good to you before you commit to a headline. But I like just kind of a more sentence case headline like that. I think your banner is extremely important. That's what is in the background. I'm just going to show you. I'm talking about this like too highfalutinly. All right, so like here's an old, I should probably update this photo, but it's like kind of old. Thought leadership for new and established players. This is what I do. These are the companies I work with. Um, Up here is my banner. When I talk about banner, that's what I mean. I want it to look clean. I want it to have good branding. I want it maybe to have a tagline, maybe to display who I work with. And then down here is my headline, right? This is what I do. This is who I've worked with. And then this is like, I don't know, this is what I do. This is my business. This is the heart of my business said in a pretty clear way. Scrolling down a bit, we've got this is the featured section. This is like the content I most want you to see. So like if you want to book a demo, you book a demo. This is an announcement about the AI app I'm developing. This is a little video where I'm talking about thought leadership because I want you to see me. I want you to hear the way that I speak. It's a good way to develop trust, right? So this is just kind of the way I have it. There's no exact right way to do it, but I do recommend a good headline. Here's an example, CEO at Republic, helping Midwest manufacturers reduce waste by 50%. I know I just said don't do the 50% thing. You can get away with it if it's not completely hyperbolic. If it's true, right? And it's not like doesn't sound like you're making it up. That's really the problem I have with it. If you're like, we're going to increase sales by 1,000% or by 10x, those are like numbers that everybody uses. It's like numbers in a startup deck. Like people are making up these numbers. Don't make up the numbers. If it's real, use it. Your about section. Okay, so focus on like the problems you solve, not just what you do. This is my about section. It's like a bit about me, but it's like, major things I've helped with and the types of companies I work with. Yeah. And then the featured section is what I just talked about. All right. So how to use LinkedIn? Like you're posting semi-regularly, right? Like how do you actually use the platform now to, you know, actually build a business? LinkedIn, I use LinkedIn Premium, so I pay to use LinkedIn Premium. I do that because I want to see more of the people who look at my profile. Profile views to me are kind of the king metric. Yes, engagement matters, comments, likes, impressions, all of that matters. But if people are coming to my page and if they're coming to visit my LinkedIn page and I can see that they're viewing my profile, that to me is more of a signal that they're kind of raising their hand, right? I can also send out connection requests, right? Like I said before, this is a unique social media platform, and it's not really just passively waiting for people to follow you. You can be proactive. You can go in and you can target members of your ICP on LinkedIn and send them connection requests. I don't recommend there's tools that automate this. I don't recommend that because LinkedIn's cracking down on those tools. They could freeze your account, they could suspend your account or shadow ban you. It kind of it's a hassle to like go in and manually, try to add 100 to 200 per week. That's the most you could do is 100 to 200. I'm not in there sending 100 to 200 requests per week. Again, build a sustainable strategy. Start out, send 5, send 10, send 20 per week. You can grow an audience that way. And if somebody gets a connection request from you, I don't even send notes to people. I just send the request. If they go to your page and they see, okay, they're sharing information that matters to me, and I don't think they're going to immediately pitch me right after I accept this request, they'll accept the request. And now they're kind of in your Rolodex, right? So if you've got a key prospect, right? Let's say you're running a B2B business and you're trying to get key decision makers, you can hit the bell icon next to their profile. If you go to their page, there's a bell icon. You'll get notified when they post. You can engage with them authentically if it makes sense. If they write a post, you could leave a comment, where it shows you read the post. There's too many AI comments out there. There's too much spam out there. Don't be one of those people. You can engage authentically when it feels right to you. Okay. And you can do that over time without being pushy. You stay in their peripheral vision. Eventually, like when it feels right, you can send, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? Hey, do you want to have a virtual meeting? You can do it in a way that feels right. There are too many bots and sales guys out there and people trying to sell you things that just spam you. You don't want to do that unless you're like trying to sell software at scale and you've got a great system and you've got a great team and you're Gary Vaynerchuk and like you've got this brand name and you can send these automatic messages that people might actually be happy to get. Fine. I'm not a proponent of that. I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's good for your brand. I just don't do it. If you want to try it, fine. I don't do it. I try to use this thing intentionally how I would in real life, like how I would have a conversation in real life, how I would approach somebody at a trade show. Going back to that earlier point, your in real life momentum, right, should inform what's happening on LinkedIn. You go to a trade show, you meet some great people, you connect with them on LinkedIn, you have a great organic conversation. They're now connected on LinkedIn. They see your content. They might forget about the conversation, but in 3 weeks, they see your content. In 8 months, when they're ready to buy, they're seeing your content. They go to you. That's how in real life, IRL can feed your LinkedIn momentum and vice versa, right? Like what's happening on LinkedIn if people are regularly seeing you and they run into you at a trade show or they run into you at an event, they'll know you already. They'll already have they won't know you as a person, but they will have formed relationships with your ideas as a business person, right? And that makes any kind of introduction much, much more easier. Quick word on comments. The algorithm's always changing, so take this with a grain of salt. I think that people leaving comments is more meaningful, and I think you leaving comments on other people's posts is meaningful. When you're starting out with a small audience, leaving thoughtful, well-informed comments on other people's posts, people with more followers than you, or people that are in your ICP, or people that are in your sphere of influence, is a good way. Sometimes those comments get much more engagement and impressions than a post would on your own page. If it's a big discussion that's happening in your industry, it's a good way to be a part of it. It's a good way for people to see your face. And then that's why that headline's important because they're going to see that headline. They're going to see what you do. They see that you're Midwest Staffing Insights and you're a Midwest biotech company, you might be clicking on that guy and then sending him a connection request. We talked about some of this already, right? Like, how do you measure how this is working? I think profile views, people actually coming and looking at your content is the most important metric. Um, Coming and looking at your profile. I think engagement is great. Comments, likes, great. You're going to see a lot of the same people kind of liking your content. But again, like your customers might be lurking you, right? Like I have people all the time approach me saying, "Hey, I love your comment. I love your content." I've never seen them engage with it. It's news to me, right? That they are even seeing this stuff. Um, Meaningful conversations, right? How many actual conversations are starting from your LinkedIn page? Meaning, how many demos are you booking? How many coffees are you getting? Is your network actually growing in an organic way that feels sustainable and real? Okay, that is the North Star here. Direct messages. I have clients that get direct messages and deals are increasingly starting in their inboxes and then they can pass it off to a sales team. But if you're a small business owner like me and you don't have a sales team, are people sending you messages, right? Are they wanting to grab coffee with you? Those are the types of real relationships that turn into business. That's what we're using here. Okay. We're not trying to game the system. We're not trying to automate this thing to hell. We're not trying to strip it and have it be devoid of any human layer of being. We want this to be a reflection of ourselves and the way we do business. Okay. If people are referencing your content in meetings, just happens to my clients a lot, people are talking about their thought leadership, that's a really good sign. We talked about lurkers to death, but we want to, we want to track the actual conversations. If people are approaching you 6 months down the line and becoming customers and having conversations with you, they may have just lurked the whole time. This is a 90-day action plan for everybody. I'm not going to go through everything, but you will have this. Andy, I believe, is going to be sending out the slides after this, at least the recording. So you can kind of, take a photo of this page or take notes on this or come back to it later. But this is really about laying the groundwork. It's taking everything I've talked about up until now and it's giving you a schedule to do this over time. Okay. Be intentional about this to start. It'll be uncomfortable, right? Push yourself to discomfort to start. If over time it doesn't feel right and it's getting in the way of running your actual business, you don't have to do it, okay? But give this a legitimate shot. This is a rubric, this is a roadmap with which to do that, okay? So again, you take a photo of this now, you can go back to it later, but this is about, you know, by month 3, you're starting to send those connection requests, you're setting notifications, you're posting regularly, you've got a good page, the welcome mat is out. That's what you'll be doing. I'm going to check really quick. Okay, these are good questions. We're going to get to that in a second. Real quick, I'm not going to do the case study thing, spend too much time on this, but I had one small business owner who was a client of mine who was pretty lost when it came to content. She ran a gifting business for larger businesses. So basically, she would put together like gifting packages when like American Express wanted to send all of their top clients like the best bottle of wine or like this homemade candle or tickets to a Knicks game, or she would put together these gifting programs for very large companies and even other small businesses. She would do that too. She was running a small business. She had small kids. She was a mom. She was married. She's got all this stuff going on. She's got a great business, but how does she market it? How does she talk about it? So we would talk, I would interview her like a journalist. I would get to the heart of how she runs these campaigns, common mistakes people make, how to run a gifting campaign, kind of giving away some of her playbook, not the entire secret sauce, but showing people this is how her business works. She didn't even post all the time. The way that her business was structured was around the holiday season was when the majority of business came in. She just had one big push around that time period where she was posting regularly. And that helped lead to business. That helped lead to conversations. That helped her book out her entire next year, right? It was her, but it was also the content. And it was how in real life informed the content and content informed these discussions, these conversations. Recovery.com is a very successful local startup, health tech company with a very good mission. They have very, very smart executives that work there, very smart people that work at the company. It makes my job very easy. We do a lot of executive content where we're talking about lived experience with recovery. We're also talking about how to run these businesses, tactics, strategies, all of that. We've gotten hundreds of thousands of impressions. They've reached very large enterprise accounts. They're getting direct messages from some of these prospects. They're hearing about how the content's working and it's leading to real business for them. It's also just increasing their brand awareness. They're fast becoming one of the premier brands in recovery. Last word, protect your sanity, right? I think give that 3-month, 90-day action plan a go, but your business comes first, your kids come first, your spouse comes first, your sanity comes first. Turn off the push notifications, don't need them. Meaning like you don't need notifications coming directly to your phone or your desktop. When you open the app, you'll have notifications, that's fine. But you don't want stuff pinging you and, waking you up at all hours. Set boundaries around how often you use it. Take a break for 2 weeks if you need to. For 3 months, it's fine. It'll be there when you come back. I think momentum is a real thing. So be aware that you'll have to kind of go back a couple steps to rebuild some of that engagement and momentum and just working a cadence into how often you're posting. But that's not more important than your brain and your health. Protect those things. Most people lurk, so success isn't just likes and comments. If you post something and it gets low engagement, don't freak out. There's people seeing it, they're forming relationships with it. Just post stuff that you believe in, that you think is good. Best LinkedIn strategy feels real and sustainable to you. Bottom line, don't try to game the algorithm. Don't try to game it too much. Don't automate it. Try to have this be an authentic representation of your business acumen and your expertise and the ways that you can educate people. Give knowledge, bring things to the table without asking for anything in return. Do that for 6 to 8 months. Cool stuff's going to happen. You do have to give it time, but I promise you, even before that mark, you're going to feel the momentum shift. Okay. And if you don't have to keep doing it, but I think you will. Relationship building. Over broadcasting, you want to be building authentic relationships with people. You, again, don't want to be spamming people. You want IRL, trade shows, meeting people in real life to inform LinkedIn. Educational content over promotional content. You can promote shamelessly once in a while, but you kind of earn the credibility to do that when the majority of your content is good, educational, sound, journalistically sound content. Consistency, that's it. Build something sustainable, consistent. Focus on being a reporter. Build real relationships with people. Show your expertise, don't just tell it. And IRL momentum. You're not trying to be LinkedIn famous here. You're just trying to start conversations and attract people that you're meant to attract for your business. All right, so now I'm going to get to the questions. And if there are more, throw them in there. Okay. How do you manage time required for organic conversations with your ideal prospect? I don't want to cold inbox people from chatbots. I think you do it when it feels right. If you're posting consistent content. When I do cold outreach to people on LinkedIn, I still do it once in a while if it's somebody I think I can really help and they're a big account and it's just somebody I think is cool. I will look at their content. I will look at their page. I will try to bring value to the conversation. I might give away a piece of content for free to them, meaning I'll share a one-pager I have that I think is really good that other people might pay $50 for. I'll give it for free to them. Or I'll just start the chat like a normal person and just say, hey, I really admire what you're doing out there. If they're following me already and they see my content, if they're ready to buy or they're ready to have a conversation, that conversation will go well. I don't automate messages. I don't use cold email outreach. The majority of outreach I do is on LinkedIn. I'm at a point now where I've got a wait list for my business, and I do add people here and there. Um, but I mostly am just posting content and just waiting for those things to happen organically. You may need to be more aggressive if you're in a place where you're kind of hunting for business. Just do it in a way that feels organic to you. I hope that answers the question. SSI score as a way to measure impact. I haven't used it. I like looked at it briefly. I don't know. Doesn't really. No. That's my blunt response. I don't think it matters. I think what matters is, are you having real conversations with people? Are people coming up to you in the hallway and saying, I really like your LinkedIn content? Are you having calls with new prospects saying, hey, we found out about you through LinkedIn? Or are they messaging you? Or is your outbound on LinkedIn feel like it's just getting way more traction because people go to your page and see, okay, this person is genuinely contributing to a larger conversation? Tagging people in posts. Yeah. You get dinged if you tag people, if you tag a lot of people that don't engage with the post. So you can't go like tag Sam Altman in a post about AI, like your buddies, and expect to like reach his entire network. But I'm a big proponent of shouting out other people at your company that you work with, that are out there doing cool things. I had breakfast. I just did a trip to New York. I had breakfast with a guy who's got a really good LinkedIn strategy. He's not a client of mine. We just had coffee and breakfast, talked about what works. He is, best way I can describe his business is that it's a platform for companies to get mentioned online. And a lot of his business takes place at the intersection between journalism and marketing, similar to my business in a way. But what he'll often talk about is how more brands are hiring journalists to be chief storytellers, thought leadership writers, whatever. And he'll tag those companies and talk about why their strategy works. And he'll post jobs, he'll post open jobs. So he has now become a news source for brands that want to learn about this and journalists that want to learn about this. And he gets a ton of engagement, and he's tagging these people. He's tagging, if Carta just hired a data scientist to lead their marketing efforts, he's tagging that person. And like his growth has been exponential. And the people he's attracting by doing that are in his ICP. So if you find that sweet spot, yes, tag people. It's a great way to grow, especially if organic numbers, they tend to be kind of flattening out right now for people. I still think it's the best value you can get in terms of organic content and marketing with like low to no cost. I still think LinkedIn's the place. So is Instagram, so is Facebook. I think social media. Um, but yes, I recommend doing it if they're not too famous, and or if you know them, or if you're shouting them out. Yeah.
Dan, we are unfortunately at time here. I know that we've got a few more questions that have come through. Dan, what is the best way to have folks get in contact with you if they had questions or maybe wanted to work with you down the road?
Yeah. So IamDanFogarty.com is my website. If you want to check it out, I could just drop it in the chat quick. And then my LinkedIn page. Follow me on LinkedIn. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And Dan, while you're doing that, I know this question has come up a couple times. I know I mentioned it right at the very, very beginning, but this event is being recorded, and the recording will be shared out to you to the email address in which you used to register for this event. So if you missed something or wanted to rewatch or wanted to share with someone else, you'll have the ability to do that.
And Andy, if people want to stay on for a few minutes, is that okay?
Unfortunately, I gotta close the
Oh no.
Zoom down here. Yeah. But yes, please feel free to connect with Dan outside of this. I know his links and pertinent information is in there. as well. Dan, as we kind of wrap up here, I had one question for you. Here at DreamBank, we are a community that is built up of fellow fearless dreamers. We always like to ask our audience, what's one piece of advice you have for someone who's actively pursuing a dream right now?
Mm. Work on it every day. Sustainability is better than thinking it's all going to pour out of you. When I was writing my novel, I thought I was going to sit outside of a Paris cafe and drink a latte, and I was going to write the great American novel. It was going to pour out of me. I was going to be touched by God, and it was just going to happen. But things don't feel the way that you think they're going to feel. It doesn't look the way that you think it's going to look. So you got to set aside time every day. I had to write for at least a half hour every day. I couldn't break that chain. So work on it every day.
I love it, the consistency. Absolutely. Thank you so much again, Dan, for your time, energy, and effort, sharing all of these insights and wisdoms here on LinkedIn. I know I certainly got a couple nuggets from this. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us here at DreamBank. Again, very much appreciated. Keep an eye out for the recording link as well as that survey should be in your inbox right now. And with that being said, we will go ahead and cap it there, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.